And most
Yeah.
importantly, they celebrate difference,
Mm-hmm.
which is like my biggest horror was that my kid, who is different in the most wonderful way, would sort of be pigeonholed into trying to be one thing. But what's so great is all of these kids' differences are celebrated and encouraged.
I'm Glenn Herbert, and I'm an editor with Our Kids. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading private schools to gain insights into their programs, culture, traditions, and leadership. This includes insights from parents, alumni, and administrators. This is the Our Kids Insider Perspective.
So Charlie was in the public system in a gifted program, and coming up to the end of grade 6, he had a really good experience, but we knew that going into grade 7, like into junior high, that things get a little bit, they change, the demands change, the numbers of kids change. And so we thought, given his learning style, we would probably need a specialized environment where he would get more attention, more support. So we started looking around, and we found a school that really fit his needs. And that school ended up actually closing. But out of that school came the Esprit Academy. And we had really connected with the principal, Jan, who's the founder of the school. So we were quite enthusiastic about moving into a program where she would be running it. And so yeah, we kind of, in a sense, we took a bit of a leap of faith because it was an untested school first year. But what really drew us to it was the focus on kids with really different learning styles, and kids that are considered gifted or have this high intellect that is not always easily accommodated in the public system when there's so many other kids. And just the small ratio of kids to adults was a huge draw for us.
Yeah. And we were really looking for somewhere where our kid wouldn't get lost. And I think that was what was amazing about what we found with Esprit, is that the school is so small that every kid truly has a specialized learning program. And it's been amazing to see that our kid is thriving in a way he wouldn't have been in the public system. Our biggest fear is that he would, get to grade 7 and be in a school or classroom of 30 some odd kids. And he's a quiet enough kid, so he could have just sat in the back of the classroom and not said anything and kind of gotten lost. At a school where there's currently 16 kids, there's no getting lost. And it's amazing. And because of that, he's thriving, he's confident, he's amongst peers that are, as fascinating as he is. And it's really rewarding as a parent to see that and see him land somewhere like that. That's so perfect for him.
He's really developed a lot of confidence and independence since starting at Esprit. And I would definitely credit Esprit to some of that. And then it's also, I think, developmentally, the age that he's at, we can kind of expect that. But they've really, because it's there's more inquiry-based learning. So there's more effort sort of around really tapping into kids' interests and having them expand on their interests and kind of go deep with their interests. I think that's really helped Charlie to develop a certain amount of academic confidence in the areas that he has strengths. He can go deep, he can really show what he's good at. And then he's developed all this confidence even around like being able to get to school on his own by the subway and mentor some of the younger kids, because they spend a lot of time. The school starts from grade 4 and goes to grade 8, and it's like other small kind of school settings. They spend a lot of time as a whole class or a whole school class. And so he gets to work with the younger kids in group work and really like be a mentor, show them what he knows. And I think that's also been a tremendous benefit.
Yeah, and I think there's also just his confidence. I think
Yeah.
What was sort of amazing for us is a lot of these kids had been together since grade 4, and here was our kid coming in at grade 7, and that's a scary thing. Like, I would have been terrified to do something like that, but he felt comfortable enough, and the environment was sort of comfortable enough and set up for him sort of in a very intentional way that he felt comfortable being himself. And I think in some ways has become more himself because of this thing. And it's been really lovely to see him accepted in this group of peers that are, fascinating and wonderful and encouraged to be their fascinating and wonderful selves. And I think like it's to see that kind of confidence, permeate through him taking the TTC by himself, through him like doing all these major things that, might be the right age to do it, but he's empowered to take these risks that he might not have otherwise taken.
Yeah. It's a strange thing to say, but I miss the freedom of taking the TTC. It is something else. It really does change you.
Yeah. It's also horrible.
It is that too.
Yeah, the best of times as well.
I have to ask, when you were looking for schools, did you use Our Kids at all? It's just a research question we ask.
Not meaningfully.
But I'm searching back because we did have to do a lot of like location is a big deal when you have a younger kid, because we didn't want to have to drive across the whole city. So I would say that I probably did. Like I would have done a bunch of Google searches, and I'm familiar with Our Kids. So for sure, like at some stage I would have come across that, but I'm not sure that was necessarily the place in which we learned about the initial school that we became interested in.
To Our Kids' credit, though, what I do remember is, it was a school called something else at the time, and we looked it up, and their website was super out of date, and I actually think Our Kids was more up to date in terms of tuition costs and all the processes.
Yeah.
I think we'd heard about the school from someone else, but I think when I started Googling, what does it actually cost? I think the only place I actually got that information on Our Kids.
That's some pretty good feedback there. They'll like that. Most people say they didn't use it.
You might say more about the school, but
the school that we originally had them going to. Yeah.
I think he likes the high interest elements to it.
Yeah.
I think, they have some creative ways of teaching. There was him and a buddy are super into space, and they were trying to teach physics. And so what they ended up doing was buying what's basically a game that teaches physics through the narrative of space. And him and his buddy would spend, oodles of time, all of their free time playing this game, not realizing they were also learning at the same time. And our kid would come home and tell us these amazing stories about what was happening in the game and, what they were going to try and do tomorrow, and was just totally enmeshed in this. And I was so impressed that the school saw value in this, saw these two kids very, very particularly, like knew their clientele, knew their customers, and zeroed in on what was going to be the most effective way to engage their brains. And I think it's those kinds of things that I think are beautiful. And even with the big projects they do, there seems to be a lot of leeway in terms of what the finished product is based on what the kid is interested in. And that's been awesome.
Yeah, for example, another project that Charlie did on Mars. Was it on Mars?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he did all the research and needed some support with all the research. But then in terms of the delivery of the final product, he was able to take advantage of, Jeff's in-house skills to set up a podcast. So, so Charlie became the podcast host all about Mars, and the finished product was fantastic. So, there's a lot of opportunity for the kids to really dive into their own interest and and skill set. So Charlie is a really verbal kid. So a podcast is a much better option than him having to write something, for example. So there, the school is quite effective in terms of recognizing that differentiation that, it can be harder in a public school setting where there's so many kids, but in this case, it's much easier, it seems, to be able to really design around the student themselves.
Yeah, and I think what's really lovely is there are definitely assignments and kids have to get, things done to show that they have learning certain things, but there's also a massive emphasis put on learning, which I don't think I had. I think I had a couple teachers that were sort of good that way, but it was still like, I didn't do well in school because it was, get this thing done, and I would look at the thing and I would not get it done, and that was it. But whereas here it seems to be, right now the kids are working on these math challenge questions, and what's great is that they do them as a group, and so the TA kind of clocks that everyone is sort of involved and everyone doing them. And for kids that struggle with actually putting pen to paper, it's awesome because they're proving that they know the thing, and they're proving that they are inputting what the lesson is, but it's not all reliant on a certain skill that they struggle with to get, sort of good grades as it would in a typical system. So it's the fact that it's so adaptable, and they don't even get marks in artistic subjects. So there's no marks in art and drama because there's no point in a 12-year-old kid feeling like he's good or bad at something. Like when I heard that, I wanted to cry because it just seemed like, oh my God, that like, I never got great marks in visual art. So I was immediately, not good at that. And so as an adult, it's not part of my life. It's so great that in grade 7, that's not a thought that any of these kids have.
Yeah, I never understood why they gave marks for that.
Yeah.
That specific subject too.
Totally useless. Like it immediately makes you, want to, I'm either a good artist or a bad artist, and I'm going to give up. So I'm not going to pursue that.
Because it's a small school, it's really easy to have a conversation with any of the staff and sort of check in and adjust as needed. I also love that because it's a small school, there's a lot of opportunity. Like even in COVID, there's been opportunities to leave the school, and when they were in school, they were out of the classroom a lot. They would go to parks nearby. There's a ravine close to the school. They would go for walks, and a lot of the learning would happen in that context. So that's been an amazing advantage through this time. And even the online piece, like it's amazing that because it's a small school, they've been able to really provide a lot more support and small breakout rooms and sort of checking in and adjusting as they go along. So I think that's been a major advantage. And I guess, the other thing, like the STEM challenges have been really incredible. Like, the founder, sort of head teacher, Jan, has done a great job in integrating a lot of experiential learning. So there's STEM activities on a weekly basis, and even through virtual learning, the kids, have to collect all these things and do it at home and then take pictures of it. So I think that's also like a really fantastic part of being in this more intimate kind of setting, is that there's a whole lot of opportunity for hands-on group-based work, which really engages our son.
Yeah, I think definitely the adaptability and how receptive they are is amazing. So it certainly coming from the public school system, where it was very much, to nobody's fault. It was, there's 25 kids in this class and this thing's not working for your kid, so maybe get outside help. But what's so great about Esprit, because it's so small, that if something's not working for our kid, we can talk to the teacher, and then because we're in a pandemic at this moment and we can hear everything on over the Zoom screen, we can tell that there are changes in place the next day. And it's really lovely that it's that sort of that sudden. And then, this is a very pandemic specific thing, but our kid was in a public school during the pandemic last year. And I don't mean to just, this is obviously very hard, and I don't mean to belittle the efforts of other people, but this still sucks because kids aren't in person together, but it sucks so much less because they are learning something, and they are together, and it's not just a total one-way conversation with kids totally tuned out. And it's, again, just because the numbers are there, and the stuff they're teaching them is so high interest.
Yeah, and it's, in some ways it's a hard question because there's a lot of limitations in terms of this first year. There were a lot of things that I know historically would have done at the previous school and had planned to do but couldn't do, like a lot more outings with the kids, which I anticipate will probably be more possible next year. So that would, certainly be something that we'd like to see. I think one of the other things, like just in terms of people that are looking, at this as a possible option for their child, is that it's the school itself is in a medical building, and it's a beautiful space, and it's very bright. They've done a great job with it, but it's not like a usual school. Like, there's no gym. There's not a lunchroom. Like, there's, the facility itself is totally unique and very different from a traditional school setting. So that would be one of the things that, like, gym is outside. Gym is that they go for walks or they go to the park. Like, there isn't that kind of, there's not the kind of facilities to really like hone in on gym or arts or the other kind of extracurriculars. And there aren't extracurriculars. I mean, that's the other piece. That's just not part of what this school focuses on.
Yeah. I think that, 2020, 2021 had to be like the worst school year in the history of school years to start a brand new school. So if I was critiquing, it's that it's not in person. There's nothing I can do about that. But I know this is not going to answer your question, but I can actually twist around to when they were in school in person. My favorite thing was that where the school is located, it is in a medical building, and if you look at it from outside, it's very uninspiring. But it's just down the street from the St. Clair ravine, and Charlie would tell us stories about going out for gym in the ravine, and basically the kids would lead, and they would be doing these things that you would sort of think were sort of dangerous. They'd be walking across rivers on logs. They'd be like climbing up cliffs. And it just warmed my heart that they were allowed to be kids, and they were allowed to get muddy, and they were allowed to lead and make mistakes and get stuck, and suddenly they're on top of a tree. And it wasn't, it was all, monitored, dangerous within limitation. But it felt like
there's a freedom.
The freedom and the kind of experience that, particularly for kids that are gifted kids that may live in their heads a lot, just to interact with the physical world in that way, I thought was amazing. So the negative part is that we're living under a pandemic and there's not more opportunities for that, because certainly sitting on a screen is not that. But I'm hopeful that next year they'll be back to just splashing in rivers. I think one of the cool things when we went for a tour, Jan, who was the head of school, sort of showed us one of their systems, and they had this really cool drawer system. And so when the kids handed in their work, they handed it into like one of, I'm going to guess here, maybe 5 drawers.
I think it was 4.
Okay, maybe it was 4 drawers. And it was the drawer was based on how much you thought you mastered the skill. So if you were doing long division, you could either put it in the lowest drawer, which was like, I had a lot of help. I really, really struggled. I probably didn't get it right. I'm handling it anyway, and it's only half done. Up until the top drawer, which was like, I breezed through this. I'm actually bored. Bring on more. And what was amazing is that the teacher could, by which drawer it was in, knew when to move the kid on to the next thing. Because a kid who just does perfect but really, really struggles and has tons of help, even though they might get 100%, is still not ready to move on. And I just thought that was so smart, that they weren't just looking at did you get an A, B, or C, but where do you rank yourself? And it's such a simple idea, and it makes so much sense. It just amazed me that that was the first time I'd heard of it. And just to be so intentional about stuff like that, I think it is amazing. I think they encourage exploring and critical thinking, and most importantly, they celebrate difference, which is like my biggest horror was that my kid, who is different in the most wonderful way, would sort of be pigeonholed into trying to be one thing. But what's so great is all of these kids' differences are celebrated and encouraged, and whatever wonderfully nerdy thing they're obsessed with, like they're presented more of that on a steaming trail of education, like to go forth and be the ultimate version of yourself you can. And so I think, like, as a value, that it's such a beautiful thing, and it's not lip service. Like they actually cater to each kid's kind of wonderful uniqueness.
But community too. Like there really is a strong focus on the kids working collaboratively, and building a strong classroom community. So that's a big piece of it.
Well, and there's certainly, in terms of community, like the kids are really respected. And sort of what I mean by that is there's not much information, if any, that we get that the kids don't also get. And so this like transparency in the decision making, good or bad, like I think the kids are they're aware as community members that this is what's going on in the world, in the school, in the classroom. And it's that transparency, I think, is pretty awesome, and certainly been unique in our experience.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, there's a sort of democratic approach that the kids really have voice in their school community, and that if there's something that they're concerned about, they're encouraged to speak up, and their voices are heard and attended to. So I think it like really breaks down that hierarchy in a way that, as a parent, I really appreciate, because there's a real camaraderie. Some of the staff are university students, like first, second year university students, and so there's a camaraderie there too, like a real kind of mentorship that happens that kind of breaks down the maybe the power dynamic of some school settings. There's just this sense of like we're working together to discover and uncover and explore and help you build your skills, and it creates this really kind of lovely context where there's all kinds of jokes, and and it's like really, it can be quite lighthearted and playful, which really works for Charlie. That really engages him.
And I think because we get this unique eavesdropping ability because school is happening over Zoom in our kitchen, I think like the sense I get is there are definitely people in charge who have control over what's going on in the structure, but that they're all friends. Like the staff and the kids and the TA, like they're all like, there is this meeting of the minds between them all, which is super awesome to see with a tenderness that kind of blows my mind sometimes.
There is some diversity certainly in terms of like, there's a lot of neurodiversity. So there's a lot of different brains in the room, different learning styles. And there's some racial diversity as well. But other, but like specifics around families and getting to know people more than that is really limited.
Yeah. I think like my inkling when we went to go see the school, one of the terms I hadn't known before was that this isn't a blazer school. And I guess that, describes the more typical uniform wearing private schools. And so I think because of that, the families may not be as homogenous as some of these blazer schools come from. that he's proud of.
I feel like,
Proud of.
yeah, well, I don't like the drama productions that he's created have been pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there was one, the teacher assigned a drama thing where I can't even remember what the point of it was, but it was
a monologue, wasn't it?
there was a scene with two people because that's what
I know, and I think that he chose, I think it was supposed to be a
Oh,
monologue, and he chose to, yeah.
Yeah, you could. I think the assignment was you could either do a monologue or you could, team up with a friend and do it over Zoom, and you're each doing a part, and then you edit them together. And he was like, "No, I'm going to do a script with 3 people, and I'm going to play all the parts." And so he filmed this thing. He was very much the director. I became the cameraman, but it was totally like listening to him. And I've watched it now about 15 or 20 times. It makes absolutely no sense to me, but it's awesome. And it's like just this totally ridiculous thing that is such a pure expression of him and is hilarious to see, where I don't even know what it was about, but basically the climax is you see 3 of him in the same frame and he's like having a full-on argument with himself. And super lovely. And the teacher loved it as well. I think because this was just his brain dumped out onto video and totally encouraged to share it with the world.
And again, and that's an example.
Yeah.
Like he's known for, this is something that he's really passionate about, and so he's known for that, and so he gets a lot of accolades for it. That this is the area where Charlie shines. So he's encouraged to bring his expertise to all the dramatic work that they do. And I can see that as also being very confident building, but also just like really being, for him to be really seen for what naturally is of interest to him and what comes naturally, that's a real asset. But I wonder, like, in terms of some of the other assignments that he's done and such, I mean, Charlie's not like, writing is not something that comes easy to him. So anything verbal and visual, he's really good at. So he's also made some amazing videos and uses Google Slides to extraordinary effect. So whenever he does some research and produces something and is able to show it with his strengths, he really excels. And then writing is the area where it's just more labor intensive and he needs some support with that. And and that's something that we just have ongoing conversations with the school about, trying to find creative ways that we can help to support that, whether it's like through, using technology where he can speak, voice to text, or having somebody scribe for him. Those are the things that there's sort of ongoing discussions to try to support his areas of need and really play to his strengths.
Yeah, it's also worth noting the ratio. So currently there are 16 kids, I believe, 1 head of school and 4 TAs and an administrator. I think they're great.
So for the most part, the head of the school is in charge of the curriculum and instruction. And then there's TAs that are primarily have been university students. And so they're working on sort of implementing the work and providing support. And then there's an administrator, a part-time administrator that was sort of running the back end of the school. Like it really feels, it's a very accessible school in the sense that we very much know all the people involved. I mean, we know the TAs were not as, we don't know them well because we have less interaction with them, but with Jan, the head of school, we're in communication with her quite regularly, and she's very approachable and very responsive. And there's going to be a new administrator coming in, but the administrator that we have been working with has done a really fabulous job as well of kind of keeping us abreast of all the changes. And and really, like, to give them credit, this has been a heck of a year to start a school. So many things that the staff have had to respond to and adapt to. And I think that they've done a pretty tremendous job in keeping us informed and sort of, checking in as well. And really, I mean, working really hard, especially with having to turn on a dime from in-person to virtual, and to make that work for all these different kids has been pretty outstanding. Yeah, it wouldn't be for everybody. Like, this is a school that would really work, for a kid who maybe isn't getting as much out of the public system because they have a unique way of learning that isn't easily accommodated in a large classroom setting. A child that really likes to engage in topics on a really deep level, and can sort of, think at a higher level, sort of synthesize at a higher level, and wants to be really connected to other kids that are engaged in the world in that similar way. I think that would be a really good fit for this school. And and if like a kid that is really into athletics might not be as good a fit, right? Because there's not going to be a lot of that. But the kid who's into Minecraft and Dungeons and Dragons, and wants to know how to get to Mars. I mean, those are things that our kid is into, and he's really found like-minded peers. And that might be a little bit, gendered as well. Like, I don't know as much about sort of some of the other students, or what their interests might be, but I know that there are a lot of kids that are interested in those topics for sure.
Yeah. I feel, I'm going to use this term with a lot of love in my heart, but it's wonderfully nerdy kids who may struggle elsewhere, and I think that's really what it really isn't a school for everybody. The community is one that I think, to truly thrive in, the kid has to have that sort of mindset to them, where they go deep, and they may struggle and need support, with this totally amazing ratio of staff to kids that it can provide. I think that's the kind of kid that would do well, and certainly that's families who are struggling like we were. When we saw that this was an option, it was like we knew that was the right one. And so I think if families know that that's the right one, that's great. But if there's another choice, then it may not be the right one. Like, I think the family that has the kid that's perfect for it knows that this is the right school for them. I think what was awesome, and this was pre-COVID, and hopefully we'll get back to this, is that our son spent a day in the previous school that the head of school taught at, and the school was based on. And he's not the kid, he's not going to agree to anything if he's not all in. And what was incredible is, first of all, that he did that totally fearlessly, stepped into a school where he knew nobody, knew no dynamics, and just threw himself in. And was even allowed to choose 3 days. Here's one where we do drama in the afternoon, one where we do STEM. And he was like, I want the drama day. And that would have terrified me to go to school and do a drama exercise. But he went to it. And by the end of the day, we're like, what do you think? He's like, yeah, it's pretty good. And that's a super high endorsement from him. And so, hopefully we can get back to that program where kids can drop into the school for a day to see if it's for them. But I think the fact the school is willing to see if it's a good fit for the kid, and if the kid's a good fit for the school, I think is great. So hopefully that will become, kids will go to school in person, and that will become a reality again. That would be my recommendation, is take advantage of that, and people should throw their kid in for a day.
For more information about this school, you can visit their profile at ourkids.net.